Hello everyone, I want to welcome you back to my channel. I'm Adrian Lloyd and this is just my stupid opinion. And today I want to talk to you about Charlottesville. This weekend in Charlottesville there's a rally being held called the Unite the Right Rally. This rally was put together by Richard Spencer and several other key figures in the alt-right movement. It began on Friday night, August 11th, but on Saturday, August 12th is when things really reached a head. And almost to always be expected, there were counter-protests whenever the alt-right shows up. There's always the counter-protests. These counter-protesters included Black Lives Matter and Antifa. Once again, we have two groups, both playing their sides of identity politics, meeting up on the streets, and as always, it ended badly. So everything began actually on Friday night, August 11th. Late Friday night, several hundred torch-bearing men and women marched on the main quad of the University of Virginia's grounds, shouting, "You will not replace us." And several different mainstream media sources have reported them also shouting, "Jews will not replace us." But I have not heard this for myself. I didn't see any video of them shouting that, so it is alleged by the mainstream media that they shouted, "Jews will not replace us." They walked around the rotunda, the university signature building, and to a statue of Thomas Jefferson, where a group of counter-protesters were gathered and a brawl ensued. At least one person was led away in handcuffs by police. Reuters and a number of local reports put the number of protesters Friday in the hundreds. The Washington Post reported that the march lasted between 15 and 20 minutes. At least one person was arrested Friday night and several others treated for minor injuries. Both sides reported being hit with pepper spray, the newspapers added. Now, a lot of people in Charlottesville were not happy with the way the alt-right did this on Friday night because they lit a bunch of torches and then they descended on the university. So there's plenty of pictures of torch-bearing men and women, mostly men. And some have said that it reminds them of the old KKK rallies. In normal circumstances, I could see the comparison, but I mostly would dismiss it. But in this situation, there's actually been several reports and pictures of KKK members that were present there in this rally. It has been confirmed that there were neo-Nazis present. There was the Klan members as well as white nationalists present. So things died down pretty quickly on Friday, but Saturday is when things really came to a head. Most of the alt-right members met in different locations and descended on their own on Emancipation Park, and they were met pretty much immediately by counter-protesters of all sorts. Some were there, independent people being there protesting them. Some were from groups. There were definitely Black Lives Matter signs in there, and Antifa was present. There were a few flags and a few signs of Antifa, and definitely a few people that were hooded up and in black as they normally are, but not nearly as much as usual. From the videos that we have so far, it's unclear as to who really did instigate the violence, although both sides are guilty of participating inside the violence. You can find plenty of videos of the alt-right attacking the counter-protesters first, and you can find plenty of video of the counter-protesters attacking the white nationalists. Both sides are guilty of violence, and that does include pepper spray and throwing projectiles at each other. But it's unclear as to who really started everything off. It was bound to happen. When you have two political ideologies, both playing identity politics, both hardcore playing identity politics, coming to a head, it's like two cars. They're not going to talk it out, they're just going to slam into each other. Supporters gathered in Emancipation Park Saturday morning in anticipation of a noon rally held by the Unite the Right. The aim of the rally was to protest the removal of a statue honoring Confederate General Robert E. Lee. The park was formerly known as Lee Park. So, and they're not really helping your cause when the statue you're trying to defend is a statue of the Confederates who were fighting for slavery. However, I do disagree with the statue being torn down for one reason, and it's for historical purpose. I'm big about history, and that is part of our history. Our history is beautiful, and it's fucking terrible. You can't sugarcoat it, and you shouldn't. People need to know what happens, because if we don't tell people what happened in the past, then we're just going to make the same mistakes in the future. And even when people know about the past, they still make the same mistakes in the future. So that's why I think we need to keep the statue, to remind people of the past. Their reason is more for Southern pride and national pride, I'm pretty sure. By 11 a.m., the scene had exploded into taunting, shoving, and outright brawling. The barricades encircling the park and separating the two sides began to come down, and police temporarily retreated. People were seen clubbing one another in the streets, and pepper spray filled the air. I watched one live stream of the alt-right members as they were approaching the scene, and they were met by counter-protesters forming a wall in front of them. And they ended up forming a wedge and pushing their way through. So in this situation, they seem to have instigated the violence because they were the first ones to actually do a form of aggression. Yet the counter-protesters were obviously refusing to get out of their way, even though they were on the way to the park, which they had a certificate for. They had every legal right to be there for that protest. It was the counter-protesters who showed up uninvited. They have every right to be there too, but you can't stop the people from getting to the protest area. You can't physically stop them. So I can't really blame one side or the other in this situation. However, right off the bat, one man from the alt-right was bear-maced. I don't believe it appeared on video, but you can see him right after with the foam all over his face, and he claimed that the person grabbed his glasses, tore him off, and maced him. So right off the bat, things were getting out of hand. And this is the problem with ideology and identity politics. It's pure tribalism. Tribalism is one of the things from our past we need to try and get away from. The police cleared the area before noon, and the Virginia National Guard arrived as officers began arresting some who remained for unlawful assembly. Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe declared a state of emergency, quote, to aid state response to violence at alt-right rally in Charlottesville, end quote. Despite the decision to quash the rally, clashes continued on side streets and throughout the downtown. So once things started getting seriously out of hand in the rally and people were starting to get hurt, there were bloody faces, there were plenty of people that already at that point had been pepper sprayed or were coughing up a lung because of some sort of irritant in the air. So the police shut it down, declared an unlawful assembly, told everybody they had to leave the park. At one point, they even the police even engaged the alt-right a little bit, using pepper spray hoses in order to drive them off. White nationalist leader Richard Spencer also addressed the group, urging people to disperse, but he promised that he would gather again for future demonstrations, blaming Saturday's violence on counter-protesters. Richard Spencer cannot blame this on one side. His side is guilty too of the violence. However, when Antifa is present, you can almost assume immediately that they are causing some of the violence. Recently, though, the alt-right they're starting to get more bold, as in they're more willing to commit acts of violence, more willing to engage in a fight in one of these protests. So it's starting to get seriously dangerous, as proven at one of these rallies, because after everything was shut down a couple hours later, a car drove into a group of the counter-protesters, killing one and injuring more than 20 others. Angela Taylor, a spokeswoman for a UVA medical center, said 20 people were brought to the hospital in the early afternoon. One died and the rest incurred injuries ranging from life-threatening to minor. Another 15 people were injured during street brawls, the city officials say. Charlottesville Police Department asked that people avoid and clear the sites of the 3-vehicle accident, 4th and Water Street, in downtown Charlottesville. They reported multiple injuries. So there were already a couple cars present in between the protesters, and then one car came in behind it and smashed into some of the protesters and rear-ended one of the cars. We have a short video here that was presented by Faith Goldie from the Rebel Media. I'm going to play it for you. I want to let everyone know that it is a graphic video, however, so if you don't like the graphic videos, you should look away for the next 10 seconds.
The full-on demonstration! Holy shit! Holy shit! Holy shit! Holy shit!
Hey, come here!
Oh god! Oh god! Oh god! Oh god!
Don't trample people. Don't
Go! Go! Okay, someone with some cars just ran over a whole bunch of protesters. A lot of people got hit. That does not look good.
It's unclear at this time which side the driver was on. The fact that he hit into the counter-protesters would seem that he's on the white nationalist side, but it really is unclear. The police have not released what the man's motivation was. He was captured. He evaded arrest for a few hours, but then he was captured about 3 p.m. on Saturday. The crash occurred approximately 2 hours after clashes in which hundreds of people chanted, threw punches, hurled water bottles, and unleashed chemical spray on each other. The rally was actually ended before it was scheduled to begin. The rally was not scheduled to begin till noon on Saturday, but it was by about 11:45 a.m. on Saturday that the police decided to shut down the entire thing. Before the car crash, local authorities said that just 1 person had been arrested and 8 people had been treated for injuries. So that's what happened in Charlottesville today. And of course, if you go online in the social media right now, people are completely divided. The left is blaming the right is blaming the left, and of course, the alt-right is taking most of the flack for this because it's the alt-right, and they are enemy number one these days. But this is why many people right now in the moderate center are calling for the stop of identity politics and for a rise in individualism again. Because we have, quite literally, we have 2 race-baiting ideologies on opposite sides. We have the alt-right that are claiming there is a white genocide, claiming that white people are the ones being discriminated against these days. And then we have Black Lives Matter on the other side that still claim that America is super racist to black people and is trying to keep them down. The difference between these two situations, these two ideologies, though, is that if Black Lives Matter was the one showing up doing something similar to this, they would not be... Hell, half the media would say that they were non-violent, and the other half would say that they were instigated by the alt-right. But when it's the alt-right, they're immediately the bad guys. Now, I'm no supporter of the KKK or neo-Nazis, and even I think the white nationalists are full of shit. They make some points, but I think they're full of shit. But you can't just sit there and immediately label them the enemy just because they're trying to actually raise a good point. There are some situations where white people now are being discriminated against. I think it was the BBC recently stated that they were looking for jobs, and they specifically said that no white people were allowed to apply. That is literally racism. So the white nationalists are not completely wrong. However, I think they're super alarmist. And they're starting to get super violent, which it's hard not to make the comparison that they're similar to Nazi Germany. But then on the other side, when we have Antifa, they look a lot more like Hitler's private security than the alt-right does, than these white nationalists do. It seems this situation keeps getting worse and worse these days. Politics is everywhere. We can't escape it. I enjoy politics, but that doesn't mean you need it crammed into every day of your daily life. That doesn't mean people need to die over it. It doesn't mean that you need to fight it out on the streets over it. This is some ancient Roman shit. Fighting it out on the streets. How soon till the gangs get involved? That already happened in Venezuela. We were having biker gangs going around, so when are the gangs getting involved? Charlottesville needs to get their shit together. Many of these people here on the alt-right could have just shown up, done their rally, gone home, talk your shit, but instead it had to devolve into this. Now, clearly though, one thing we need to address is the alt-right clearly came prepared for violence this time. Because they had shields, they had clubs, they were ready to fight. They have in the past, but to this extent, I've never seen it. Even if I look back to Berkeley and the 3 battles of Berkeley that were there, people were not that well armed. If we take a look at some of the photos, they have shields, but everybody on the front rank now has shields. This is starting to get out of hand. And the more and more I listen to certain people that talk about how a civil war is coming, I kind of felt that they are alarmist. But when you see people arming themselves to this extent over politics, then it actually gets scary. I want to thank you for joining me today. I am Adrian Lloyd, and this is just my stupid opinion. My next episode is going to be about an atheist group that is being targeted by the Malaysia government because they posted a picture of their meetup and it went viral. Many people in this moderate Muslim country are demanding imprisonment to death for this atheist group. So I'll be coming to you soon with that. I'm Adrian Lloyd. Thanks for joining in.